Hey friends, Dubmaster Kahn here. Thank you for checking out the channel. So I'm a huge fan of do-it-yourself electronic gear. I've built like 10 electronic kits for the 500 series. I built my tube amp back there for my guitar, and I always wonder what that sound was, in those records, that kind of electronic drum kit sound. And when I found out that it was the Synare 3 and that you can build a kit yourself, I was super pumped. So I picked one up and I built an enclosure, and I have it triggered by this pad here. And you can build one too. DIY stuff and soldering is not hard. It takes a couple little tools, but once you get into it, you're set with the tools and you can build tons of stuff. Also, if you're not inclined to DIY stuff, the sounds that you're going to hear at the end of the video, I have a sample pack that I'm selling for 20 bucks, and the link will be in the description. But without further ado, let's check out what's required tool-wise for this build. So for this build, you're going to need a soldering station. This is the Heiko. You're going to need solder. That's a Kester 6040 solder. A multimeter. That's a Fluke 177. It's a really nice one. A desoldering pump, because you probably will screw up the first time. Some flush cutters to get nice and close to the PCB. Wire strippers, pretty straightforward, and some needle nose pliers. The last thing you're going to need is some sort of third arm. This is a Panavice PCB holder, and it's a really cool one, but you don't need something that fancy. You can get a cheap third arm. So let's dive into the build. All right, so I'm going to get started here by putting in all the resistors, and these are bipolar, so you can put them in either direction. And so you can see I'm bending over the leads here, and I start soldering. And really, soldering's not that hard. You just heat up the pad for a couple seconds, and then you let the solder flow. Now I'm trimming off the leads. I'm going on to the next area, putting in more resistors. And yeah, I mean, it's really not hard. It just takes a couple of, tries and practice, and it's really not too difficult. So I'm going to turn this around here and solder these bad boys. This is sped up, I think 20 times. Trim off the leads. I touched a couple up there. On to the next resistors. And I'll say that the assembly guide's really easy. It tells you, which ones to put in. Obviously, you need to check them with your multimeter just to confirm what values each resistor are. So there you go. You can kind of see most of the solder came through. So that means I did a pretty good job of soldering it. And these through-hole components are really pretty easy to solder compared to surface mount. This is probably my, 10th DIY kit that I've built, so I've gotten pretty good, but really I haven't had too many troubles with the kits. It's really not hard. I think I missed one. Yep, there you go. So now I'm on to the next batch of resistors. And yeah, it's straightforward. It's pretty relaxing. These are really addicting. Once you get into them, you'll kind of realize how much fun it is, and it's just relaxing. So I'm soldering up these resistors, and I'm going to trim the leads. Okay, now these are the capacitors, and those blue ones there on the right are polarized. You can see there's a black stripe that indicates negative, and it is imperative that you put it in the right way. The green ones and the orange ones there and the little yellow ones, those are also capacitors, but they're not bipolar, or they're not polarized. You have to you can put them in either direction. It's only those larger capacitors with the stripes on them that need to go in a certain direction. So but yeah, if you put them in backwards, then basically the electrons can't flow. They the electricity is meant to flow in one direction, and if you put them in backwards, then it won't work properly, and it could blow up. So now those black things that I'm putting in are called transistors, and you can see they're pretty easy to get to put in back. They're easy to put in correctly. You just follow the PCB, the silk screen. You can see there's a flat edge on one and rounded on the other. So I'm just soldering those up. These ones are a little bit more sensitive to heat. You have to kind of do them more quickly. But yeah, I've never ruined one, so I usually keep my soldering iron at 750 degrees Fahrenheit, and I just do it quickly. Yeah, that should have been slowed down, sorry. So I'm putting on the sensitivity resistor, and now I'm putting on all the switches, the potentiometers, and I actually put them on backwards because if you put them right side up, you can't really get it in an enclosure. So I emailed the owner of Helensson and I asked him, hey, can I put them on backwards? Is that going to screw anything up? He said, no, yeah, definitely you can do it backwards. Just note that the operation of the potentiometer, will be backwards, but that's not a big deal. So I put all the switches and all of these upside down, but they'll still work. And you'll see now I'm putting in the little sockets for the chips. So I'm soldering those up. And those are cool because basically you can replace the large chips without having to desolder them, which would be a complete nightmare. As you can see, there's like freaking 20 pins on each one. So now I'm putting in the input-output jacks. So what I'm doing now is I'm making a template for my enclosure, and the enclosure that I bought is just a Hammond box. It's just a black plastic box that fits the PCB pretty much perfectly. And you can see here I'm just kind of tracing where the pots are, and I'm going to make a little template out of that. So I found a cardboard box laying around the office. I did this on a Saturday, by the way. And I'm using this to make a template that I'm going to transfer onto the plastic box. You don't have to do this step. Obviously, I wanted a nice cool enclosure for mine, but if you're okay with it just being a PCB, you can put those switches on and the pots, right side up and just sort of, have a raw PCB. But I wanted it to look somewhat professional and nice, so I'm making this crazy little template. So you can see I'm trying to match them up. This isn't, rocket science. I did this pretty quickly. Now I'm using a knife that's way too big. It's like for cutting cake or something. Just to cut this out so that I can transfer it, check it out a little bit better. I see that it doesn't line up perfectly because, I'm not really using the right tools for this, but hey, it works. Eventually you'll see it worked out. So I'm kind of massaging it, drilling a little bit more, reaming the holes. Yeah, went a little too much on that one, but that's okay. And then you can see that those switches there, it's kind of a bummer. They're kind of tall, so I actually have to cut out a rectangle for those switches so that I can get the knobs on, because the knobs aren't sticking up long enough, or like the shafts for the potentiometers. So then here's me focusing. Lots of fun. So there's my little enclosure and there's my template. So now I'm going to transfer this with a couple of pilot holes. Just drilling through the enclosure. What I really should have done here is like tape it down because it's moving around. I just wanted to get this done, and really I should have spent a little more time doing it, but it turned out okay. So now I'm drilling the 4 corners of this. That's kind of where the switches, the 2 switches are, and I have to cut it out of the top of the box, which sucks, but it's the only way that I could get the knobs to bite onto the potentiometer shafts. So here I am drilling the big holes for the pots. That black plastic went everywhere. And here I think I'm going to cut. Yeah, there you go. Now it's all done. It's not beautiful, but hey, it works. All the pots are up. So now I'm going to test this thing. So what it said to do in the manual is get 2 9-volt battery connectors and wire them up together so that they create, 18 volts instead of 9. And so I'm connecting it to the power source on the PCB. So there's basically 3 connections on this PCB. There's the power, which is what I'm doing there, and then the one just next to it says trigger, and that's basically the piezo that comes with it for you to turn it on and off for it to trigger the sound. So now I'm doing some testing here. I really actually don't know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of prodding around saying, hey, do I have 18 volts anywhere? And it doesn't really look like I do. But eventually, there we go, 17.26. So that's close enough. So yeah, I did confirm that there is power to the unit. Okay, so this is the finished build here, and I'm just going to kind of break down what I did because I'm doing this live now. It's all assembled, it works and everything. Just let me break it down. So I've got all the knobs here put on, and the switches. You can see this thing, they had to stick up a little bit proud of the box just so that the knobs would go on. And then you can see here we got a couple other things. I have an on-off switch here. This does not come with the kit. I have a little DC adapter here that didn't come with the kit, and neither did either of these 2 jacks. The case didn't come with it, and the knobs didn't come with it. But you can see here, these are the standoffs on the PCB where you can, I guess tighten it up. So here is the inside, and I'll break down to you what I did. And like I said, all of the knobs and stuff, originally, they're supposed to be facing up. But I did them backwards so that I could get the enclosure, because these 2 capacitors right here, the blue ones, are too tall. If I put them facing up, then they wouldn't actually, you couldn't get this enclosure to work. It just wouldn't work. These are too tall. So if I had to do it again, what I'd probably do is I would get full-size pots and a bigger enclosure, and then I would just solder, wires to each one to an actual full-size pot, and then I could make my enclosure however I wanted to do it. Because to be honest with you, these knobs are really close together and they're very small. But anyways, there's 3 jacks that we need to know. This is the output jack, and basically this is what takes it from the output of the synthesizer to, you could go straight to speakers, or in my case, I record into my console, and that's just a simple 2 wires wired straight from there to this TS jack. It's actually a TRS jack, but whatever, I'm only using the tip and the sleeve. So that's just straightforward. You just figure out which one is the ring and which one is the tip, and obviously I drill the hole in the enclosure here and just put this nut in there. So that's the output. And then as far as the trigger, to actually trigger the synthesizer, that's this here. So I have it to another jack, and the kit actually comes with this little piezo element that if you touch it, it triggers the synth. So that's cool, but I wanted to use a Yamaha pad you know, to trigger this, to trigger the synth, which I'll show you in some sound examples in a minute. But so that's that. And then this one is the power, and I got a little bit fancy. You really don't need to do that, but this is what you saw earlier. I had the 2 batteries hooked up to it. Well, I bought an adapter here, 18 volts, 1 amp. And I asked the guy if 1 amp was too much for this thing, and he said, no, that's fine. So then that comes with this. And then I bought a little jack, this guy, that I soldered here. So when I plug this in, that brings power in, right? And I could have just gone right from here straight to the power. But I wanted to add a little switch. And that way I can leave this thing plugged in and I can just turn it on and off like this. So all it's doing is going from here to there, there to there. And the yellow one from the other side to there, there to there. So it's really simple. You don't need to do that, but I just think it's cool because I can leave it plugged in and I can just turn it on and off, right? It's just for convenience, and I thought it was cool since I went to the extreme of, you know, actually putting it in an enclosure and everything. So that's it. It's really simple. Let's get into some sound examples. Right now I have the Synare kind of set up for a clean tom sound, so let's take a listen. What's really cool about this thing, the analog synth here, is that when you play it quiet, it is lower pitched, and then when you play it louder, it's higher pitched, and the decay is a little bit longer and the attack is a little bit brighter. So if I play it quiet, you know, and then a little bit more, and then harder, so you can really get a lot out of it. It's like you're playing a real drum almost. It's so expressive and awesome. So let's take a listen to a couple, like, let's just lengthen this. Or make it a little dirtier. Right? Or we can make it high, lower pitched. Or we can make it all wobbly sounding. Or like spacey sounding. And I mean, you can really make it long. Do those like kind of cool, you know, wobbly. Dirtier. The possibilities are seriously endless. So let's take a listen at the sample pack that I've sampled this thing like in every kind of imaginable thing usable for reggae. So if we start here, you can hear some kicks. Right? All kinds of different kicks. And I use some EQ and stuff just to kind of get them to sound more like kicks, you know? These are what I call the bubble. So you know that kind of like, instead of doing the organ bubble, you can use, you know, something like this. Right? And I have varying lengths, varying pitch. So pretty much every pitch starting from a short decay to a long decay. So here's a longer decay over here, right? And then somewhere in the middle, and then a shorter one. The different pitches, but all the same length. And I've done that on all the toms too. So if we go to clean tom here, and then longer ones, super long, right? Right, and then I got some dirty ones here. And that's a longer decay. Here's a shorter one. Right, I got 400 samples here. Some really cool effects type ones. As well as like where I'm playing with it physically. Sounds like a UFO. Let's see, what else do we have here? Some really long ones. Some cool wobbly ones. I also have noise. The noise is cool. Like short to long, right? All the samples I do short to long. Here's a really long one. And that's just the noise. So what I actually did is I took some tom sounds and then I took some noise sounds and put them together to make some snares. And that's these here. Right? You've heard that sound before as a snare in a reggae song. I know you have. So that's kind of more of a Simmons type sound, but I made it because you need a snare sound in the sample pack. And here's some like clicks in different pitches. I don't know why you'd want that, but I just think that's like a signature sound of this guy. Yeah, what else do we have? Spacey toms. Some wobbly cool stuff. So yeah, anyways, I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope that I've inspired you to maybe pick up one of these physical kits, you know, and build your own analog synth and trigger it with a pad. I got this pad for 20 bucks off of Facebook Marketplace, so it's not expensive. I think all in, even with the enclosure, it was like maybe 175 bucks. You can also buy these. I know there's some brands that sell them, I think for about 300 bucks, all, you know, kind of built. It doesn't come with the pad, but you can pick that up. Also, you know, a way to support me in the channel is to pick up the sample pack, and I really would appreciate if you did that. At least please like and subscribe to the channel. On the next video, I think I'm going to take my sample pack and maybe like make a reggae song out of it just to kind of inspire you more. But the bottom line is DIY is good, and if you can, you know, get into it. It's a lot of fun, but the most important thing for me is that you make good reggae music. So with that said, have a great day, and I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.